We got Timothy on, Daniel's here on camera. Everybody else, if you have the opportunity to get on camera, see your beautiful smiling faces, your trendy new eyewear, or your amazing new mustache. I think those would all be amazing things for us to be able to see this morning. And I think Tim wins fanciest glasses of the day. I think he just did a magic trick with them, pulling them apart and putting them back together. If you can do anything that cool, you can actually host today's show. All right. No one's here. Well, maybe next week's show. I'll see here a little bit. You guys will see here, I've gone full hipster today. I'm actually drinking a shot of espresso out of a wood cup. Yeah, so I'm not only 37 and on my path to financial freedom, but I'm just as cool as the kids. That's absolutely right. Into it. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is equally as cool as espresso out of wooden cups, and that's going to be insurance. I know nobody's gotten excited about insurance, probably maybe their entire life into it, but I guarantee you today will be the first day in your life you're going to look back and be like, how did I get so excited about a conversation about insurance? Like, what happened? And I'm really stoked to be able to share with you guys about some of the insights that I've had working with Aaron Porter here inside of Royal Insurance. I'm really looking at this really critical question, which is, how does insurance play in to accelerating our path to financial freedom? Right? Because that's what we really are here all about, right? We're all here together because we're on a common mission, which is how are we going to get to financial freedom in a way that's going to be faster and a way that's going to be more guaranteed, right? With less drawdowns, less backpedaling, less road bumps along the way. So given that we're all here on that same mission, then we all form a community that's supportive of each other as we have our collective wisdom to be able to guide us through that. So to tee up today's conversation, I want to tell you what I'm absolutely not and what me and Aaron absolutely aren't. We aren't here to say that we know everything that there is to know about insurance. Not at all. What we are here to be able to do is to help provide a framework and some expertise that we have into how insurance can be leveraged in the appropriate way to be able to help us onto our path of financial freedom. And how do we think through that? What's the approaches that we use that are powerful in thinking through some of that information? So here's the way I see it, guys, and you guys can tell me if you guys see it a little bit differently. But here is what I see that we've been developing here together as a group of a way of thinking through our path to financial freedom. So really, I think we have this going on right now. We're all here like on this mission, and this mission that we're on here together is we want financial freedom and we want it fast. Yeah. Then we say, well, great. Well, and what way are we going to get financial freedom? We're going to get it by looking at best practices. I say, what are the best practices of the ways that we've seen real estate investors and investors just like us get to financial freedom? Royal Legal Solutions helps out here. Why? Is because we work with over 2,000 real estate investors and other investors all over the country. And so we get to see what are the predictable things that people are doing to success. This best practice turns into our values, right? Our mission is we want to get fast to financial freedom. Our value says, how are we going to do it? We're going to get there by utilizing best practices. How do we know they're best practices? Because we've seen thousands of people use these types of approaches here in the past. So great. Where does that take us to? The next thing that we need on our path to financial freedom here is something that we like to call inside of this company, we like to call it awareness. You need to be aware of what's happening. And what's your best way to be aware? These are with your numbers, your critical financial numbers. And if you're saying, well, how do I know what my critical financial numbers are? Well, this will be your first time getting introduced to the Financial Freedom Calculator. We're not going to be going over that calculator here today. We have training up on the Financial Freedom Calculator, as well as a number of videos and other things that Liz would be able to help connect you with, to getting into how can I get to my critical financial numbers that if I focus on these numbers, it's going to get me to financial freedom even faster. Once we know our critical numbers of financial freedom, then we say, well, great. Well, what are the things I need to do next? And today, there are a few critical things you need to do, which is where you would see it on our homepage. You guys have all seen something that looks like this, right? We call it our financial freedom temple, right? It's right there on the homepage of royallegalsolutions.com. And that tells you all of the critical subject matter areas or critical considerations you need into getting to financial freedom. Today, what we're going to be talking about is some of those pillars that we have is the pillars of financial freedom. One of those that we've always talked about historically is asset protection. Yeah. Asset protection is what helps you once you're sued, right? Once you're sued, and it can prevent lawsuits because of anonymity, right? We've all heard those discussions about the series LLCs, how we're going to use anonymous trust to be able to help protect all of our assets and hide them to prevent lawsuits from getting filed, because it's going to look like you qualify for food stamps on paper. And guess what? People who look like they qualify for food stamps don't get sued. And even if they do sue, they're going to get little to nothing. That's what our asset protection systems come into place. But there's something else that happens first. It's my favorite thing to rely on because somebody else pays for it. And that's what we're looking for is insurance. Insurance is fantastic. It's like I get to go out there and say, listen, I don't want to pay for that. Chris, remember when I bought you that hot dog at the fair last week? You get to pay the $1 million claim that came out of this. Insurance is so cheap for the kind of protection it provides. And it's amazing because what it's able to do for us is say, hey, somebody else just go handle it, right? The moment we get into a lawsuit, now we have to hire attorneys and we have to do all of this other work that comes into our lives. And even though we know we're going to get to a great outcome because we put the right asset protection in place, wouldn't it be great if somebody else just handled it and paid for it? Right? Wouldn't that be great? And that's what insurance is doing for us. It's our first, easiest, best line of defense. It's where you get the most value for every dollar that you spend. And that's why I believe in being very, very well insured. Why? Because remember, the game is about how do we use best practices for steady growth to financial freedom. What we're looking for is a system of wealth building that allows us to be able to go continually up and to the right. Right? One way that we think about doing that historically has been through our real estate investing. We think those are safe assets that grow and appreciate year over year. We get passive income that comes into it. Fantastic, right? When we're talking about insurance here today is another way to be able to make sure that whatever we make, we keep. Asset protection is one way to do that. Insurance is your best first line of defense. If I only had $1 to spend, I would spend the dollar on insurance, right? And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what's cool about that's new and different that we're able to offer here at Royal Insurance. Now, I know a couple of people have come in through our process before and had some initial conversations with us. Those conversations, I hope, went really well. What we found out before was like, holy smokes, the scope of the things that our people need help with are big things, right? We have people that come in and say, hey, listen, I just want one property or two properties that I need, a property and casualty quote on for this rental property or a home that I have or a boat that I own or an automobile. And then we had some people that came in initially and said, hey, I got 100 houses. And we're like, whoa, we have to rethink how we can handle that kind of volume. So now what we've done is we've learned from those initial people that we've talked to. We've reformulated our fulfillment or our ability to be able to handle volume at any volume level now and any type of servicing request that we have. We've partnered with some amazing companies that are going to basically work in-house of our systems to be able to handle that. So I want to thank everybody who's reached out to us so far. I also want to reaffirm, if you have reached out to us here in the past, Aaron's going to be reaching out to you here to re-engage on those. But if you don't hear from Aaron, please reach out to us and re-engage with you on what we can do for you there, because I think you're going to see at the end of this call that we can really, really help simplify your life and save you quite a bit of time, and time is money. And I think we're actually going to be able to beat a lot of the rates too, because of the volume types of transactions that we're able to put through that no other insurance provider is going to be able to do, because of the scope of the number of clients that we have and how active you all are as investors. Okay, so let me show you a little bit about what it is that we put together so far. All right. So this is the way that I look at what we have going on and how we would typically view our different types of insurance needs as real estate investors. Yeah. So the first thing that I always looked at here, this was going to be like our property insurance. This is typically where you're going to have like your house, right? This is where we would always say, great, well, all of us here on this call, we have properties, whether they're single family residences, commercials, apartment complexes, or whatever. we have property insurance needs. And the great thing is no matter what those needs are, we have the insurance providers to be able to help those needs, no matter what state they're in and no matter how many you have, right? So we would be able to be a one-stop shop for you on all of the property insurance needs. Now, when we talk about what this property insurance, how do we typically look at that? Well, one thing is I look at as my property insurance. This is like my belt, right? I like to use like a belt and suspenders approach. You're going to hear me talk about this. This is going to be my belt, meaning like this is the thing that keeps my pants up, right? Like I have to have property insurance. It's so important. In fact, that even banks make you do it, right? The issue when we look at property insurance, right? These costs are going to be variable, and that depends upon states. As you can imagine, like if you have a house in Kentucky, that's really different risk than a house that's on the beach of Florida, right? So you should expect like these types of costs to be variable, but the ways that you get this variable cost to be better is volume, right? And that's going to be true in all insurance relationships. So even if you're negotiating with your own agent on your own, or you're working with us, the key thing here is going to be saying like, well, if I can get them more volume, well, they'll be able to get better rates. The advantage you get with working with us and being part of essentially our collective that we have with Royal Insurance is that you get the benefit of the volume of all of us together pulling through one source instead of having to pull it together on your own. So the first thing I'd say, everybody, absolutely critical piece for you to have is going to be that property insurance. Now, we also are able to offer another type of insurance here that might be applicable to some people and not others. And this is typically where we're looking at different type of like business insurance or business umbrella policies. Now, business insurance and business umbrella, you might say, well, what in the heck would I possibly need like a business insurance or a business umbrella policy for? Well, it's typically what you're looking for on these types of insurance is you're looking for like, okay, what happens if my manager leaves, right? That's called key man insurance. Can I insure against the fact that I have a critical employee that left my company? Yep, yeah, you can. This is called key man. You have a key person that leaves, they leave the company, what or something happens to them, what can you do there, right? Then you'd have like a general liability policy that says, well, what happens if somebody gets like a customer gets hurt at my store? What am I going to do with that? Well, most of us don't have stores, so maybe general liability policies like aren't really that applicable. And then the last one that you want to look for is like, what happens if somebody gets into like an accident? What happens if we get into an accident here? Me or another employee have an accident on the premises. What can we be insured from that? So these two things, unless you're actually having like an active storefront or customers coming in, you probably don't have to worry about these too much. If you have an active business that you're looking for, that would be like a key man insurance, like a manager to come in. But if you have no business, don't worry about the business insurance. Typically, it's not going to be, it's not going to do you a ton of good without a business in place, as you can imagine. The next piece of insurance that we're able to offer inside of what we do, here's what we would just call these. We call this as like our personal umbrella policies. Our personal umbrella policies, these are our suspenders. So what happens is if your property insurance doesn't cover you, your belt doesn't cover you, then your personal umbrella policy, your suspenders comes in. The great things about these is these are very cheap, right? Why are they so cheap? Is because they come second in line from the property insurance that you would have, right? Your property insurance would cover you from anything that's primary. Anything else, it's your personal umbrella policy comes in to protect you. Now, where is that? Yeah, go ahead.
I want to just, I know you're on a roll, but with your umbrella, if your underlying policy doesn't cover you, your umbrella is not going to cover you. So we got to make sure that underlying policy is paying out something, is accepting the claim before your umbrella pays out, right?
Yeah.
Your umbrella doesn't pay out anything if you don't have that underlying.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Aaron. So when we talk about here, these are like your other types of personal insurance, right? You typically refer to like your auto, your boat. If you have a plane, you'd have a plane here. And you'd say, well, great. If I have an underlying policy for my cars or my boats, planes, or whatever that case may be, Might also want to get like a personal umbrella policy that flexes in to say, well, maybe my auto insurance coverage only covers me up to say 35,000. But what happens if I have $1 million claim? Well, now my personal umbrella policy steps in with $1 million of coverage. And guess what? That $1 million coverage might only cost me like $350 a year, right? So it's just a way of ensuring for a small amount of money, you're able to take your policies here and juice them up in a way for a little tiny amount of money to say, well, cool, I want to make sure that I'm appropriately covered in all of my individual policies, but I got some suspenders, right? I'm appropriately covered on an accident of my rental of this property, but I'm also personally covered with like this backstop, right? Now, beyond this, and there's the other pieces that we look into for our insurance when we're looking at when we look at these types of insurance. The last piece for us to talk about here is the last spoke of this. This is what I would refer to as like legacy protection. And then you'd call this refer to like, typically this would refer to like as a life insurance policies, right? Typically when we're looking at what is appropriate for life insurance policy, the reason why I'm really bullish on saying why we should all have life insurance policies is because what happens is we have to like zoom out, right? What is the meta of what this is all about? We started this conversation with saying, hey, this is really about financial freedom, right? I'm really looking to accelerate my path to financial freedom. How can I do that? But the meta behind that typically is I'm creating some type of legacy for my children or something that's going to exist beyond me, right? I want to care for my family. I want to care for those things, right? So what does that mean if you don't have a life insurance policy in place? That means you have to have significant cash, usually about, I'd say like 10% of your portfolio sitting in cash, because when you die, guess what? Bills start, they don't stop. Attorney bills, tax bills, like everything else, right? A bunch of cash is needed at that point. So what is it that you end up having to do at that point if you don't have significant cash reserves is you end up having to start selling assets. And guess what? They have to sell assets fast, and they have to sell assets while they're dealing with your death. It's terrible, right? It's a terrible thing to have to go through. And likely what will happen is part of your legacy then gets cannibalized because it wasn't adequately prepared for. I don't like leaving a bunch of cash. Why? Because my cash are my soldiers. When I look at my financial freedom calculator, my cash is the thing that I'm looking for is how does my net worth influence my passive income? And I'm targeting to keep that number above 4% for me. The average real estate investor has it at 1% or less. I like to target above 4%. So we need to have that cash in play, and it's cheaper to have that cash in play and buy life insurance than it is just to hold on to the cash. And there's really cool ways actually that you can take that cash, buy a life insurance policy, and then loan yourself money so you have cash flow and liquidity from the life insurance policy. That life insurance policy is then able to pay you a return on investment. And it's also you're also able to take that cash and redeploy it into more investments. So you get like a death benefit, an immediate return, and a secondary return through some of these life insurance strategies. So there's just really sophisticated ways of protecting your legacy in a way that doesn't materially impact your path to financial freedom and lets you cover off on some big downside risks that could happen there with your family. So what I'm looking for typically when I'm thinking about my life insurance here is what I do is I try to keep it about 10% of my estate, right? I think that it typically costs about 10% of your estate for, you're talking about like attorneys, taxes, there's, change of title issues, right? There's all kinds of fees that come in. And so I like to say, well, it's about 10% of your estate, depending on your size of estate, but like use this as a best fit rule. And then what I also like to do is say, well, I need at least 10% of my total estate. The other thing that I want is I want $50,000 per kid per year until 21. So if I have a 10-year-old, that means I got 11 years at $50,000. So I need an extra $550,000 in life insurance apart from the 10% of my estate. The reason why is because I just want to make sure that I have enough money from the life insurance policy to fund this trust to make sure the kid's going to be taken care of. When you were talking about the total number of dollars here, $550,000 in life insurance is almost nothing. Right? It costs you barely anything to have this type of extra protection. So if you guys want to like use this analogy as like the belt and suspenders, right? This is our belt, right? We have underlying policies, our personal policies and our property policies. Those are our two belts. What do we use for suspenders? Our suspenders are our umbrella policies. That gives us the extra line of defense here. Same thing here with the life insurance, right? Your belt is your 10% of your estate going to cover all these fees. My suspenders is making sure that I'm going to guarantee you that my kids are at least going to have enough money coming in to the age of 21 to make sure that they're fully supported. After 21, I'm going to trust that they're going to have enough together to make sure that it's going to be okay. This is really just a plan to say, I don't know how the future is going to unfold, but I can have a set it or forget it type of system and know that it's going to be fine. That comes with it. Great. So there's a couple of extra, there's more details that I can dive into, but I wanted to go ahead and just start the conversation off since this is, we're introducing, I think here is, this is probably a new idea, a new way that people on this call might be thinking about insurance between like the different types of belts, how you can get really cheap suspenders and how you can start to plan for how does life insurance bracket out for what it is that I need. As well as being able to cover off on questions here that you might have for us. You might be looking for things as like if you're the sole breadwinner, when you look at personal, well, what happens if I get disabled, right? What happens if I get in a bad car accident and I'm the primary breadwinner of my family and I'm disabled and I can't work? Well, how long is everything going to be okay, right? And here's a fun question for you. When you think back at how long you could go on vacation right now with your business, how long do you think you could go on vacation right now and still have everything be fine? Right? The average person I talk to gives me about 2 weeks. About 2 weeks to 4 weeks where they're like, stuff's going to start feeling shaky. By the time we start getting into months, things are starting to get really like, well, I hope somebody knows how to step in to control it, because really, who's actually controlling most of the finances right now? That's you, isn't it? Right? You're the one that's actually the person that's driving most of the things forward. You know where the contacts are at, how to get to the bank accounts, how to do everything, how to make sure the deals are going to work right, whatever, right? You're the one that's going to make the rainmaking of the money happen. So if you end up in a hospital, right, hopefully you have an estate plan in place. If you set up through Royal Legal Solutions that has a healthcare power of attorney and has your durable power of attorney set up. So that way your trusted person, your spouse maybe or somebody else, can step in to start to control some of those assets. But you might expect that your income is going to drop significantly during that time, because guess what? If you could have just hired somebody or turned over the keys to that business to somebody else and have it run exactly the same, you would have already done it, I bet, right? Because who wouldn't have? So how do you cover that gap to make sure the family is protected financially while you're recovering? And the answer to that is the types of disability insurance, personal disability insurance, which whoever is the primary breadwinners of the family should have something in there that says, great, if something happens to me, the money still keeps flowing into the family to keep the family afloat. So we're not doing a double duty, which is, hey, dad's in the hospital because he did that rad backflip off the skis out in Keystone this year. And we're trying to figure out how to make ends meet while he's recovering from that. That is rad, but we got to still have money coming in, right? And that's what your insurance can help you cover in that place, right? So those are the ways that I balance out, saying, okay, our belt is disability insurance. The suspenders is making sure you have a great life insurance policy that comes into place. When you ask us questions like, well, is that enough insurance or not or whatever, we can't really answer that question, right? It exposes liability. What you can expect us to say is, hey, we're meeting the minimums here and we have this much umbrella policy. And we have typically, most people have at least 1 million, sometimes up to 3 to 5 million in umbrella policies, because it's just not that expensive to have the umbrella policies. And you say, great. Can you imagine a scenario in your life where you would get sued for more than $5 million? And he's like, probably not. You know, it's like, great. So does that make you feel comfortable? Yeah, it does. And you might say, well, do you think that's good? And we're going to say, I can't answer that question. You know, like I can tell you what most people do, but I can't tell you what you should do. Right. So that's the fine line. I know it sounds like a bunch of hokey nonsense, right, that comes into it. But hey, listen, what would you expect from a firm that specializes in litigation and how litigation and protection works, right? And so you can imagine that that's what we're doing, right? And that's why we have it structured in this way, is because we want everybody to come in to have the feeling that we're on your side for it, the whole way through the process, and that the way that we make money is by helping accelerate the growth of all of the investors into getting into more properties, because that's more policies. We don't need to make more money on one individual policy, right? We're going to win by having exceptional experiences with all of our people, and that's what we're looking for in that field. So the second question too is like, what happens when you're at that place where you're like, hey, I'm spending more on insurance than I could be just handling it on my own. I think that happens when you have like higher volumes, right? And on higher dollar figures that come through, right? So I've seen people do two things. I've heard of people doing self-insurance. I've also heard of people pulling together with similar businesses to get into insurance captives, which I believe have about a $250,000 minimum that come into. If you're at those income levels, I would recommend looking into it. If you're spending really significant dollars and insurance, maybe like triple digits is probably a good place to have as like a benchmark for when it makes sense to start looking into insurance captives and pulling together with other similar business owners. It can be any type of business as well. The insurance captives are really cool because basically what you do is you pay into your own insurance fund. That insurance fund can then turn around and make investments with it, right? But all the money you pay into that insurance fund is a write-off to your business, right? So you get the tax deduction on the front end. You're also then able to turn around and make investments with those. Those investments don't pay any. My understanding is those investments don't pay any taxes either, because it's all owned by the insurance policy, right? The insurance policy has like a cash value to it. So if you're at the right income levels and you want to talk about captive insurance, we can do a whole nother segment on that if we get enough interest. Yeah. If enough people end up reaching out to Aaron and say, hey, I want to learn more about this, then we'll pull in the people. It'll be Aaron, myself, probably a subject matter expert from our network to come in and say, hey, great, let's have a presentation on this. And that way the full team has collaborated with the community on, hey, this is how this works and how it works in the royal way of thinking about that, right? So if that's an interest for you, whether it's going to be, indexed, universal life policies, those types of life insurance policies that I told you guys about before, which is how can you buy a life insurance policy and then be able to loan yourself, how to have your life insurance policy pay a return, be able to loan you money out of that life insurance policy and get millions of dollars in a death benefit from it. If you're interested in something like that, those are called index universal life policies, whole life policies. We can do like a presentation on those if we want to. We're also able to pull in things about here are the captives, but what we need is feedback, right? What we need to have like valuable conversations and have valuable discussions with everybody is feedback on, hey, this is what we want to learn more about. And Aaron is a person in your life that is all things insurance for you, I hope, right? That's our intention, is to be able to let Aaron go do all the legwork through his network to pull in the right people for us to push into these group calls, to have the good facilitated group conversation about what opportunity that looks like, as well as be able to help you personally, help guide you through, here's exactly what you would need to do to be able to execute on covering off on your risks in the most efficient way. So that's our goal is make Aaron your go-to guy, right? Anything, just like we are for hopefully with anything that's asset protection and tax related, thinking about new things or exploring new concepts. Great. You have a trusted source to come to that can help you think through them. And here, Aaron's going to provide that for all of us here on the insurance front, as well to be your quarterback on making sure that everything is going to be right. Because I don't know about you guys, but I hate getting 5 quotes for everything that I want to do. Right. And I've loved working with Aaron into it. I was the first test subjects actually through these systems to say like, oh my God, man, this is so much easier and better than having to actually call up and talk to agents myself and having to quarterback all that info.